Welcome back. When it comes to climate impacts, no other region of the world will bear the brunt as much as Africa. One country in particular is just rising up from a succession of 5 severe climate change-related disasters in 3 years that have left hundreds of people dead. Yet, Malawi offers a good example on how to stay climate resilient. Its president, Lazarus Chakwera, presents an image of a country that does not want to play the victim card. Instead, he wants other poor countries affected by a crisis they have hardly contributed to look at the opportunities from within them to create resilience for their people. As heads of state and governments, UN officials and a host of climate and environment players gather in Nairobi this week, President Chakwera spoke exclusively to NTV about energy sovereignty, climate resilience, and surviving the blows of nature.
Your Excellencies, thank you very much indeed for sparing time to speak to us today.
It's a great honor.
Right, and I'll go straight into it. Now, for Malawi, we talk about climate crisis, but for this country of Malawi, it's actually been real. The amount of destruction, the loss of, lives and so on. The flooding that followed thereafter. I'm just wondering, how have you actually coped with the effects of Cyclone Freddy?
You're right in stating that we've had a tragedy of untold proportions. We've never had it on this level. When you have these type of tragedies, 5 in a row in space of 3 years, it becomes hard on people. But the resilient spirit and the fact that we've been able to have our neighbors come through for us, the fact that we've been able to have collaborative efforts across the country from various stakeholders, the fact that we are able to face the danger in the face, as it were. The people are rising from the ashes. It's truly been tragic. Over 1,000 people dead, and scores of farmland washed away, villages, sometimes whole villages just washed out. And so when you have infrastructure destroyed, we had over 45 bridges taken out. You can go on and on. But again, just facing the reality, we've been able to do immediate things and then plan for more resilience. And so Malawi is coping.
What's been the most difficult task in addressing this climate crisis?
Well, the immediate thing was to make sure that necessary provisions are there for people: housing, water and sanitation, food, and medical supplies. These were needed, not just for a while, but for all of the time that we had, well, close to 700 camps where people were finding shelter. But the problem was, in some places, you couldn't hardly get there.
Right.
Again, because the infrastructure had been destroyed. And during the storm itself, no flights could take place. And so you couldn't even use helicopters to be able to bring some people that needed relief. So it was really bad.
Now, we've had discussions about this loss and damage fund and, how it needs to come in and step in. And we're just wondering, what kind of political, as we look forward to COP28, what kind of political momentum maybe have you yourself and other leaders, especially African leaders, put in to see that this fund is actually operational or is operationalized so that it can help countries when they're in need, such as we had in Malawi?
Very interesting question, because I have attended 2 conference of parties, and in both we were talking about not just what had been pledged, But some of the monies that are already available through various groupings, green funds, global climate funds, and so forth. But some of the intricate technical matters associated with accessing these funds, you almost feel like these funds were not meant to leave the hands of those who say the funds are available, because it becomes extremely difficult. And perhaps that speaks to the whole financial systems under which nations operate. It becomes something that you almost feel like accessibility is tantamount to being denied because you've got to follow through all of these things. And in the end, then, it's a matter of saying, what is the best route for us to take in order for us to truly become a continent that is resilient, able to face these shocks, and able to build for the future in terms of self-reliance?
For the complexities involved, I mean, is this lack of willingness on the people who should release or support the release of these funds, or is it the lack of seeing that there is an urgency? What's your reading of it?
It could be a combination of factors, and certainly the political push needs to be there, and the technical ability, the capacity of those that are needing to access these is also needed. But you can't dwell on technical issues when there is an emergency.
Now, Mr. President, although it constitutes just 17% of the global population and is responsible for only 4% of greenhouse gas emissions, Africa has the least capacity to adapt to impacts of a warming climate. Yet, when you look at it today, a lot of attention is given to mitigation. Now, given your own experience in Malawi, shouldn't there be a lot more focus on adaptation and building the resilience of vulnerable communities?
In fact, there's been talk about mitigation, about adaptation, some of the newer technologies, the innovative ways of making sure that we have new sources of energy. Some of these, because it's just breaking new ground, is extremely expensive. That's why even in the face of danger, the West talks one thing, but when they are pressed in a corner, they go back to the old system because they're used to it and continuously, therefore, jeopardizing everybody else. What we need is, yes, mitigation, adaptation, but the loss and damage was to enable people to say, then we can stand up and adapt. Now, we are in the process of adapting in order for us to be really seen to not go the way of all flesh in terms of everyone going that way to develop. But you still need to have a certain understanding. Malawi is leading, for example, in this renewable energy in terms of solar. At first, we couldn't have storage. Now we have battery storage systems, and we are experimenting with this so that we are able to have people access electricity. Malawi's story is something that needs changing because 10% is too low. And we're saying, well, let's target 30% by 2030. But if we go this new way, and we have mini grids, and we can even surpass that target.
Mr. President, as we sort of approach the end, just my last question on the climate change space. There's been a lot of push by especially developing countries to reform, the financial system, the global financial system, so that the terms are fairer for Africa and other places. Where do you stand on this? What's your view on what needs to happen?
Well, I made a reference previously to some of this climate financing and the technicalities associated with it that almost make it impossible for people who do need the financing to have it. And I think there's been good conversation started, and it should continue. For example, when President Macron most recently talked about the need for these financial institutions to rethink their way of, and we are part of those who say we do need to really seriously look at financial institutions and all the lending systems, making money available for nations. The reforms are needed yesterday. Reforms that can, make sure that nations who need financing have accessibility to the same, and it's equitable also in the manner in which this is done in a transparent fashion. Nations need to be able to, for example, trade with other nations using their money systems. Rather than feeling capacitated and bound, they should feel freed and able to go. And so, in fact, I am, during this interview, I've just come out of my country to attend the BRICS at the invitation of President Cyril Ramaphosa of South Africa. And these are the things that are being talked about. I'm happy that the UN Secretary General is also going to be here for the BRICS meeting, because all the nations need to be part of this conversation. Let us make sure nobody is left behind. Every nation prospers, because a system that is designed to keep others out is not a system that can claim to have inclusivity. A system, particularly a financial one, needs to be one that will liberate everybody else to say we have the confidence that what we produce and are able to sell, we are also able to use the same to develop our nations. And this is all everybody is talking about, and I think we should honestly be at a place where we say, if changes are needed, let them happen. We said the same thing even last year when I attended the UN General Council for the first time in person. I said we need a system where everyone is able to be at the table to make critical decisions. And I was making reference to Africa having a permanent security seat at the Security Council. That way, then, like I used to say in my campaigns years ago, there is nothing for us without us.
That part one interview with Malawi's president, exclusive to NTV, but it is courtesy of Africa on Air and hosted by Joseph Warungu. Stay with us, part two of that interview, right after this break.
Show off your best skin with Nivea Nourishing Cocoa Body Lotion, now with 5-in-1 Complete Care. The deeply nourishing formula prevents your skin from drying, with precious cocoa butter and deep moisture for smooth and healthy looking skin. Step out in confidence with our most complete care from the world's #1 skincare brand.
If you're hungry for chapos, make it Ajab. Easy. Kamatis and samos prepared just easy. No stress, no mess when you're kneading. Easy. Ajab is a soft, rolls out so easy. So quick to prepare Ajab base so easy. Soft to the taste and touch, it's easy.
Enjoy cooking your favorite meals with Ajab and freestyle your way to deliciousness. It's easy to knead, easy to roll, and quick to prepare. Ajab home baking flour, the flour that does more.
Just on that, a critical point that you raised in terms of having permanent representation at the Security Council, and there's also the push for Africa to have a seat at the G20. Do you think these things will actually happen?
If they're really listening and knowing that we are serious, they will happen.
Mr. President, when I heard that you were here and we have a BRICS summit going on, I wondered, is Malawi seeking to join BRICS?
We're here to observe and to see how the conversation is carried out. And we're new on the block, and so we want to see where are we headed.
There's, as you mentioned, there's a greater kind of reaching out to more African countries to also come in, just like you've come in, even if it's just to observe and so on. Are there particular solutions or approaches that BRICS offers that is beneficial to the African continent, in your view?
In my view, I think BRICS is listening to people's cries and saying, can we come together and respond to the same? Can we find an equitable way of dealing with these multiplicity of issues that bedevil nations? And I think that's the spirit that is needed. And if others want to be part of it, I certainly want to be part of it, to make sure that we find solutions that are good for all humanity and not just for a few.
Does that complicate relations geopolitics-wise with, for example, America and Europe and so on, when this bloc now moves in a different direction?
Well, I don't think so. You know, these are matters of perception, but I believe that when you're pursuing the common good for the majority of people, one needs to rethink one's position, even if one had a different opinion. In this day, when you really want to look at options, when you really want to be innovative and to be flexible so that you change when change is needed, and you are able to channel that change, because change will still come. But if you can't control it, then it changes you or maybe deforms you. So you know, reforms can deform rather. So you need to be in control, and the best way is let's all sit around the table. Let's talk about these things.
Part of some of the stuff that comes out, for example, which has come from some African leaders as well, is that Africa needs to consider an alternative to the US dollar, de-dollarization, maybe a currency for Africa. I don't know where you stand on that.
I would say let the owners of the dollar sit here. Let everybody else sit there. Let's talk it out. Let's be honest one with another. You understand?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'll close it two questions away from the world of politics and so on, because we're also addressing young people in this. Just a question on leadership. You're a believer yourself, you're a man of God and also a politician. Now, we understand politics to be quite murky and dirty. How do you manage to negotiate that space without compromising your Christian principles?
That's one of the biggest challenges one has to face, and I guess I signed up for it. But I find solace in my faith. I believe that it shouldn't be just private or personal. It should also be public. And some of these things get me in trouble. Other things encourage me. But the young people, they are people with faith and with resilience. And the reason they are innovative and they want to look for options and answers is because my faith does encourage that. And so I believe that we can find solutions, even for us in Africa, that are tailor-made for us, that are not given and, you know, almost spoon-fed to us, but things that we say, can we try this, can we try that, can we try the other? We have sufficient human resource because Africa is a young continent. We have sufficient other natural resources in terms of all of these things that everybody fights for and fights to get from Africa. We can make progress.
My last question again for young people, Your Excellency, is that apart from the Bible, is there a particular book that has inspired you as a leader? People would be really keen to know. And also I'd like to know if there's a particular song, whether now or in the past, that that inspires you.
Oh my! Then you would go up in 1,000.
Let's start with the book, maybe.
But of course, you recognize that if you talk about the book, then it's the old book.
Absolutely.
The Bible. Yes. But in terms of books, there's so many of them, sometimes it's hard to just pick out one. But issues to do with leadership, issues to do with transformation, issues to do with leading generations to accomplish visions. These are issues I have read. You know, now I read more memos, but I used to read one book a month. But I read more books now, going through all of these other memos in a sense, because of the pages. But from just self-interest, Stephen Hawking's, you know, A Brief History of Time, all the way, this is one extreme, you know, all the way to doing business at speed of thought, because of, you know, the Bill Gates and company. And then you talk about our own writings, because I love literature, and so I study that, and so all of our writers, things come to mind sometimes when you think about how to approach certain things. And so I still revere all these African writers, you know, Ngugi wa Thiong'o and Chinua Achebe, Wole Soyinka, and others, even the revolutionary Leopold Senghor and Agostinho Neto and others. But when it comes to songs, I love traditional, I love reggae, I love jazz, I love country music. Even one time I was in Nairobi, and I met this visual impaired country singer. And I would buy his tapes and then get to my house and get my children and say we would sing some of those. So my family loves songs. But when you're talking about my faith and the goodness of God, Sissy Winans, for example, and you say, God has been faithful to me. I haven't always been, but he has been. And he has been since I was born, even before I was born, because I'm Lazarus, name given to me. While they had given me a traditional name to say he will probably die the next day, because nobody had survived as a male child in my father's house. And I was the first one to survive. So my father said, we'll name him Lazarus, as if come back from the dead. Wow. So God has been good to me. And even if people write me off, I'm Lazarus.
Amen. Now, Mr. President, I'm struggling the picture of you as head of state and reggae. My former president in Kenya, Uhuru Kenyatta, was a great lover of reggae. UB40, he just gets... Is there something about presidency and reggae? I mean, I don't know. But yeah, so it's just different genres. Because we tend to be musical in our family. And so there must be something about reggae, because you can still hop anywhere once you listen to it. The Bob Marleys of the world. And you have new ones now. It's just great. Mr. President.
Teaching
Yes.
that is found in some of these music. So it's not just the sound for me, it is also the lyrics. Yeah.
Mr. President, on that beautiful, wise note, I just want to thank you so much for your time in this conversation. Thank you very, very much indeed.
Most welcome, Joseph.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mungu akubariki sana.
Asante sana.
Malawi's President Lazarus Chakwera speaking there to Joseph Warungu about Malawi's resilience during problems in Malawi related to climate change. And that interview exclusive to NTV and courtesy of Africa on Air. You can also catch it on our website, I beg your pardon, that's ntvkenya.co.ke. All right, we're taking another break. The business